While the world was busy crowning Max Verstappen for his fourth consecutive championship, the biggest story of 2024 wasn't dominance. It was Lando Norris's quiet, violent revolution. This is the story of how Formula One's most talented nearly man became Max Verstappen's biggest nightmare.
Lando Norris on the attack! Lando Norris going through on the brakes, or can Verstappen hang on to it? He keeps his foot in, they both go off the road. Norris moves ahead for the first time since lap number 1, but he did so.
A technical revolution at McLaren that unleashed a championship contender who had been trapped inside an underperforming machine for years. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how one weekend in Miami changed everything. How a safety car, a perfectly timed upgrade, and years of pent-up frustration collided to create the moment that shifted the entire balance of power in Formula One. But to truly understand Lando's ascendancy, we have to start with the brutal reality of what came before, the weight of expectation that nearly broke him. You have the speed, the racecraft, the mental strength, everything required to be a champion, but you are stuck. Every time you get close to that first victory, something goes catastrophically wrong. Russia, 2021. Lando Norris is leading his first Grand Prix with 7 laps to go. The rain starts falling. His team, seeing Hamilton pitting for intermediates, strongly advises Lando to follow suit. But Norris, with a massive lead and victory in sight, ignores the desperate calls from the pit wall, choosing to stay out on slick tyres.
Lando, what do you think about it, Inter? What do you think about it in Inter?
No!
He slides off track at turn 5, handing the historic 100th victory to Lewis Hamilton and walks away with nothing but heartbreak.
Says Lando Norris slides off the track and avoids the barriers.
That moment cost him a win and created a narrative that would follow him for the next 3 years. The talented driver who couldn't get it done when it mattered most. This was more than just mental pressure. Lando himself knew the deep truth. The McLaren's poor drivability was a long-standing disease in every car he had raced. He had the talent, but he didn't have the tool. By the time he arrived in Miami, Lando held one of the most painful records in Formula One history. 15 podiums without a single victory. 15 times he'd stood on that podium, watching someone else spray champagne, knowing he had the speed to be up there but not the machinery or the luck to finish the job. But here's what the critics missed while they were busy writing him off. Those 15 podiums weren't accidents. They were proof that when given even half a chance, Lando Norris could compete with anyone on the grid. The problem wasn't the driver, it was everything else. And McLaren knew it. While the paddock whispered about Lando's mentality, the engineers in Woking were working on something that would silence the doubters forever. The 2024 season started exactly how you'd expect for a team still finding their way back to the top. McLaren had pace, but it was frustratingly inconsistent. Australia showed flashes of brilliance. Lando grabbed P3, proving the MCL38 had speed in the right conditions. China delivered a P2, another podium to add to that painful tally. But between those highlights were weekends where the car simply couldn't compete with Red Bull's dominance. The problem was technical and brutal in its simplicity. The MCL38 was fast in high-speed corners where aerodynamic efficiency mattered most. But in the tight, technical sections, the places where races are often won and lost, it struggled for grip. Against Max Verstappen's RB20, which was dominant everywhere, McLaren needed something more. Red Bull was operating with a substantial developmental lead that seemed entirely insurmountable. Then came Miami's sprint weekend, and it felt like the same old story was about to repeat itself. Turn 1, lap 1 of the sprint race. Chaos. Contact. Lando's race is over before it really began. Another DNF to add to the frustration. As he climbed out of his damaged McLaren, you could see it in his body language. The weight of those near misses, those almosts, those what-ifs. But what Lando didn't know, what nobody in the paddock fully understood yet, was that McLaren had been working on something revolutionary. A technical package so comprehensive it would transform not just the car, but the entire trajectory of the championship fight. Here's where this story gets interesting and where McLaren proved they weren't just another midfield team playing catch-up. They were about to drop the most significant mid-season upgrade package in recent Formula One history. The Woking factory fast-tracked the B-spec MCL38, a package so profound it superseded the old chassis. Rather than simple add-ons, this upgrade fundamentally revolutionized how the MCL38 generated downforce and managed airflow. The centerpiece was a completely new floor design. In modern Formula One, the floor is everything. It's where the majority of a car's downforce comes from, and McLaren's engineers had identified critical weaknesses in their original design. The new floor improved aerodynamic efficiency, It was engineered to create instantaneous, stable suction in low-speed corners. This transformed how the car behaved, finally eliminating the long-standing problem that bled time to Red Bull. But they didn't stop there. The front wing received a complete overhaul, designed to work in harmony with the new floor to pull the car into the apex, giving Lando the crucial front-end grip he needed to attack corners with confidence. Revised suspension geometry was implemented to provide more controlled movement, directly addressing the need for better mechanical grip and consistent tire performance over long stints. Even the brake ducts were redesigned to optimize cooling while maintaining aerodynamic performance. Here's the kicker. While Oscar Piastri received only a partial upgrade package, Lando got the full treatment. McLaren was making a statement about who their lead driver was, and they were backing him with their most advanced technology. The timing was perfect, but also risky. Bringing such a comprehensive upgrade to Miami meant they had limited testing data. They were essentially conducting a real-time experiment with championship points on the line, but McLaren's broader context made this gamble make sense. This was bigger than just 2024. McLaren wanted to prove they belonged back at the front of the grid after years of rebuilding. The team that had dominated the late 1980s and 1990s, that had won championships with Ayrton Senna and Mika Hakkinen, was ready to announce their return. And Lando Norris was going to be their messenger. May 5th, 2024, Miami International Autodrome. The moment everything changed. The shift was immediate in the first practice session. Oscar Piastri, running the new components, shocked the paddock by placing P2, just a tenth behind Verstappen. The MCL38 had been reborn. But practice times don't win races. What happened on Sunday afternoon was pure strategic brilliance, combined with a driver finally unleashed. It was a typical race start. Max Verstappen grabbed the lead from pole position, with Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz in close pursuit. Lando, starting from 5th, made a clean getaway, but found himself in the familiar position of having pace but needing track position. This was the moment McLaren tore up the strategy playbook. Ignoring conventional wisdom to undercut the leaders, they made the high-stakes decision to keep Lando out. Lap after lap, as Verstappen, Leclerc and Sainz pitted, Lando stayed on track, extending his stint on tyres that should have been dead. But they weren't dead. The upgraded MCL38 was managing tyre degradation better than anyone expected. Lando was posting competitive lap times on rubber that was 15, 20, 25 laps old. The car that had struggled with tyre management all season was suddenly the most efficient machine on the grid. The perfect storm was gathering. On lap 22, Verstappen made a crucial mistake, striking a bollard that damaged his floor, costing him critical performance.
I hit that cone in 15, check the front lead. Understood.
Then came lap 29, where Kevin Magnussen collided with Logan Sargent, forcing Sargent into the wall and bringing out the full safety car at the absolute best possible moment for McLaren's strategy. Finally, the racing gods were smiling on Lando Norris. The safety car timing was so miraculous it felt scripted. Lando pitted under caution, emerged with fresh tyres, and found himself in the lead of a Formula One Grand Prix for the first time since Russia 2021. This was the moment Lando banished the ghosts of the past. When the safety car peeled in and Max Verstappen immediately attacked, Lando took a defensive stance, held the lead, and then surged away. The restart was poetry in motion. Lando held Max off through the first few corners, then began setting fastest sector times, easily exceeding Red Bull's pace. By the checkered flag, it was a commanding 7.6-second margin of victory over Max Verstappen.
Lando Norris wins for the first time in Formula One. It's victory.
This was a statement of dominance from a driver and team combination that had finally found their perfect harmony, not just a lucky win. When Lando crossed the finish line, the emotion was raw and immediate.
We did it, Will! We did it!
The radio message that ended 3 years of frustration, a 110-race wait, and the agony of 15 previous podiums. The paddock's reaction told the whole story. Driver after driver congratulated him, not just for the win, but for finally getting the monkey off his back. They knew what this meant. The talented Nearly man had become a race winner, and Formula One had a new contender. But Miami wasn't just about Lando finally getting his first win. This was the moment the 2024 championship fight fundamentally changed. Before Miami, Max Verstappen looked untouchable. The Dutchman had won 4 of the first 5 races and was building another commanding championship lead. The narrative was familiar. Max would dominate, everyone else would fight for scraps. Miami shattered that narrative completely. Suddenly, McLaren was competitive and consistently the fastest car on the grid. Imola brought another P2 for Lando. Canada, another P2. Spain saw him claim pole position and finish second only after a strategic masterclass from Red Bull. But more importantly, the psychological dynamic had shifted. Max Verstappen, who had grown accustomed to managing races from the front, now had to really fight. For the first time since 2021, he had a rival who could match his pace and wasn't afraid to go wheel to wheel. The numbers tell the story of this transformation. After Miami until the end of the season, Lando outscored Max in 9 of the final 18 race weekends. But Max's earlier lead was too great to overcome. The ultimate prize went to Verstappen, who secured his 4th consecutive title in Las Vegas. However, Lando's blistering consistency and pace fundamentally elevated the entire team, laying the groundwork for a historic late-season charge. The Miami Grand Prix was the true turning point. It was more than just one driver finding form, this was McLaren's definitive announcement. They were back as a championship-caliber team. The upgrades that transformed Lando's car were being refined and improved with each race weekend. The team that had been rebuilding for years was suddenly setting the pace for development. This relentless development cycle bore fruit immediately. The team brought new components to almost every race, from a refined front suspension in Austria to a high-speed rear wing at Silverstone. This pace forced competitors to take notice. By the Spanish Grand Prix, Ferrari rival Carlos Sainz publicly considered the McLaren MCL38 to be the most impressive and most consistent car on the grid. The impact went far beyond the championship fight. It changed the entire competitive landscape of Formula One. Ferrari, who had started the season as Red Bull's primary challengers, managed to hold on to second place, but it was Red Bull Racing that found themselves fighting a losing battle for third. Mercedes, still struggling with their car concept, was suddenly even further behind. The sport that had been dominated by one team and one driver for 3 years was suddenly unpredictable again. And it was all because McLaren had finally given Lando Norris the tools to show what he was truly capable of. What emerged from Miami wasn't just a new race winner, it was Formula One's most compelling rivalry since Hamilton versus Verstappen in 2021. But this rivalry was different. Where Lewis and Max had been shaped by years of mutual respect and occasional animosity, Lando and Max represented something new. The established champion versus the hungry challenger. The driver who had everything to lose against the one with everything to prove. Their on-track battles became the highlight of every race weekend. Austria saw them go wheel to wheel for multiple laps in a fierce fight for the lead. A duel that ended in a dramatic and controversial collision.
He's got a puncture! He's damaged his front wing! The leading contenders for the World Championship!
Silverstone, however, delivered a masterclass in clean racecraft as they diced and swapped positions, proving their rivalry was capable of being both explosive and brilliant. Hungary became a defining strategic moment for both teams, though the headlines were stolen by McLaren's internal team order drama and a separate clash between Verstappen and Hamilton. But what made this rivalry special wasn't just the racing, it was the respect. Max, who had rarely faced a consistent challenge since his championship-winning years began, was forced to acknowledge the new era beginning in Miami. "I'm very happy for Lando," Max said immediately after the race. "It's been a long time coming, and it's not going to be his last one." This was a shift in the balance of power. Even later in the season, after clinching the title, Verstappen reinforced this sentiment, describing Norris as one of F1's incredible young talents who had made it very difficult for him all year, confirming that the new championship fight was here to stay. For Lando, the transformation was visible. The driver who had once seemed burdened by expectation was now thriving under pressure. The nearly man had become the man to beat, and he was loving every second of it. The championship fight that had seemed over in May was suddenly alive again by August. What had been a Max Verstappen procession had become a genuine contest between two drivers at the absolute peak of their powers. By the time the season reached its final third, the transformation was complete. Lando Norris was a true championship contender. The underdog had become the top dog, and Formula One was better for it. The statistics tell part of the story. From Miami onwards, Lando scored more points than Max for the rest of the season, piling up multiple race wins, pole positions, and fastest laps. The McLaren MCL38, transformed by that crucial upgrade package, became the benchmark that every other team was chasing. The result? Max Verstappen ultimately secured his 4th consecutive World Championship.
Max Verstappen is a 4-time Formula One World Champion!
But Lando finished a career-best second in the drivers' standings. and his immense run of form powered McLaren to their first Constructors' Championship since 1998. The technical revolution in the McLaren served as the catalyst, finally giving one of the most naturally gifted drivers of his generation the machine he needed. The team that had been rebuilding for years had suddenly become the standard-bearer for how to develop a championship-winning package. And for Formula One as a sport, Lando's Ascendancy represented something crucial, proof that the established order could still be challenged. That talent, when combined with the right technical package and strategic thinking, could still overcome even the most dominant teams. The Nearly Man had become the benchmark. And to prove that Miami was no fluke, look at where we stand today, in October 2025. Lando is becoming part of the most dominant team in the sport. McLaren is currently leading the Constructors' Championship, with Lando and his teammate Oscar Piastri battling each other at the absolute top of the 2025 drivers' standings for the title. Lando Norris's 2024 season is the definitive proof of Formula One's beautiful unpredictability, a flawless collision of technical innovation, strategic brilliance, and raw, unleashed talent that reshaped the entire competitive landscape overnight. The moment Lando crossed the line in Miami, it announced the arrival of a new era. McLaren was back at the front, Max Verstappen had a genuine rival, and the championship fight was alive again. The Underdog had found his upgrade, the upgrade had enabled his ascendancy, and Formula One was infinitely more exciting because of it. From Nearly Man to championship contender in the span of one perfect weekend. That's the kind of transformation that makes this sport absolutely irresistible. If Lando's journey from heartbreak to triumph inspired you as much as it did us, smash that like button, drop your thoughts on the 2024 championship battle in the comments, and subscribe because this McLaren revolution is just getting started.